Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome. It's great seeing you. So I'd like to start with a story. In the last few years, I've been working with micro frontends. It's been great experience. And recently, I joined a company where we have an amazing product. However, we're still busy splitting up the big monolith that we have. And so over the years, I've gained some interesting experience and knowledge in micro frontends and also recently using module federation. And I would like today to share with you some of those insights that I've gained over the years. And so I would like to start with, does anyone here in the audience recognize this? Please raise your hands, shout, whatever you feel like it. All right, so I see some hands and some people are confused maybe. So basically what we're seeing here is the create React app generated code, right? It has TypeScript in it, storybook, some other stuff. And so basically what I'm trying to convey with this is that we're all building applications, right? And what happens as our teams grow? Well, they obviously go further, right? So more teams are added, more components. You know how it goes. More folders you're adding, the more teams and working in the same workspace. And so basically, do you start seeing the issue here? More teams working in the same workspace. And so let's start with, who am I? I'm Daniel Frey. I'm a software engineer at Lemonade. I'm also a content creator. DanielFrey.me. You can find my podcast where I talk about anything that is related to engineering and software and just really anything that you would like. I also love meeting and collaborating with people. Although this is obviously virtually, feel free to reach out on my Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm always available and welcoming. Now, let's dive in deeper. Let's talk about some of the struggles that we currently have with the monolith. So you already know it, right? Today, we're using React. Yesterday, it was AngularJS. Tomorrow, it can be Banana.js. It doesn't really matter, right? They're all technologies which keep on evolving and changing. And so basically, currently with this current setup that we have this technology log, right? Because if we want to move this big application that we have right now, with all those folders, it would be extremely difficult to do so. We're basically locked, right? So it's going to be hard to move on because, technology advances and we want to move forward with the industry. And currently it feels like we're kind of locked, right? And so leads me to the second point where we get single deployments, right? Does anybody here recognize that when you change a certain dependency, you need to now redeploy everything, right? A button in the UI library or just anything. And this costs us time and possibly our pipeline can fail. And so if it fails, we have to rerun it again. And we're again redeploying this really big chunk of code. And it costs us a lot of time and it goes in a single way, in single deployment, and everything is in there. And so we get then also maintainability issues, right? We have this large project, multiple teams working in the same workspace, like we just said. And so maintaining it and adding new functionality is becoming more and more exhausting as we are feeling like there is like more and more features are added, and we are also losing visibility on our code and what is ours and what is from the other team. And this integrates with that. And so it really becomes hard to maintain. And that leads me to the process overhead that we get, right? More teams, more dependencies, releases require coordination. We need to also align the priorities. And if you have released something that might hurt another team, you cannot immediately see it in production, right? Because someone else in the same workspace that you're working with has to make some changes as well. And again, it's just this big, large project. And so we saw some problems, right? And we discovered them. Now let's find some solutions. Now I'd like to take this to the backend for a second, and seems like they have already got some kind of solution, right? Currently, in most companies, we have this setup where in the backend, we have this microservices split it up, right? And each microservice serves a specific business case. And in the front end, we still have this big monolith. Now, what if we could take some of those principles that they have put in the microservices architecture and this mindset into the front end, right? We're still talking back and front end, but we can have some similarities. Well, and before we do that, let me show you something. So does everybody can see my screen with the website, right? Good. So what we're seeing here is basically this simple website where it's showing the episodes from my podcast. And if I click on one of those cards, I'm going to get more information about the episode. And I have also this card. It's like this website could grow further. So let's say we have certain episodes on my podcast that they require a membership. So they're going to be like a user interface where it shows the user profile and what kind of subscription you have and what kind of things you liked. And there's of course like this header and footer thing going on and this checkout page. And if I click checkout, it just clears out. But you can see how complex this website can grow and become, right? I can take it anywhere I want. And so now that we saw this, what if I told you? What if I told you that what we just saw now were 4 separate websites or applications, and I could deploy every single one of those separately of the other, and the changes that I would make, they would reflect immediately. So they're all running together, and any change that I will make will reflect immediately, and I don't need to also redeploy all of them for the changes to appear. And so if this comes to you as a shock, let's break some things down. So the breaking down thing starts here. Basically, I have this header and footer, split it into its own home repository. I have this mini cart, which goes to the like cart. And also have this media player, which goes to the player. And then I have this episode content, which goes to the content. And then even the like button, the small one, this one went to the like cart repo, which then ultimately results in this: 4 separate teams, 4 separate apps served at runtime, which results in one big web application. And like I said before, each app can be owned and deployed by a different team. And if we wanted to, we could even then use a different technology. Like you saw here, I show an example with React, and then there is a button with Vue. Now I said they're all working together, right? We splitted them up. They're all kind of working together, but how is it possible? And this is where Module Federation plugin comes in, Webpack Module Federation plugin. And what it really does is this. This is the main power that I get. So in this example, what I want to show you is basically I have this hello on my page title in the header, and I want to change it to whatever other title. The video is playing for you guys, right? If I click on it now, it's playing.
Yeah.
So basically what you just saw is that I saved that file, and the changes that I made just reflected immediately. And it might not be so visible for you, but what I did now is basically have the home package saved, and the home package contains the header. And now I'm in a different page, which is content, which uses the home package, the header basically from the home package. And I just clicked save, and everything just happened that I didn't need to redeploy anything. And it's just so that it has been updated for me automatically, as if it was just like a local file that I just didn't need to run anything else, basically. Now, this looks like magic, and this might look a bit confusing. So it's not really that difficult. It's not that complicated. There are really just three simple concepts whenever we use module federation that we need to remember. And those three are hosts, remotes, and basically hosts that require remotes at runtime. Let's start with the host. A host is an app that consumes remote components. And the way it looks like, since our project is based on Webpack, we can now use the Webpack Module Federation plugin. And then we get basically in the plugins array, we can give it this new Module Federation plugin. And then we get this name property that basically means that every application has a name, obviously. And then in the remotes object, we basically have the name of the remote and where we want to fetch it from. Now, in this example, you can see that I'm fetching it from local, but it can be either an S3 if you're familiar with AWS. It can also be some kind of static hosting. It's really up to you where you're going to fetch it from. And then we're going to move to the remotes. So now your app can also expose remotes. Remotes can be consumed by any federated app. And the way it looks like is like this. We basically have this exposes object, and you just simply define the name of the component that you want to expose, and then the path to that file. And now that we have everything in place, we can just basically import it easily, just like we're used to. Normal imports, really nothing new here, right? Now, we solved some problems here, right? We have splitted our applications, and with Webpack Module Federation, we managed to connect everything together, which resulted in this setup where we achieved micro front ends using Module Federation. We have managed to connect all those applications together, and with micro front ends, we split all the teams, and now it's more scalable, and there is no need to redeploy. And your teams can work now independently of the others. And if you're making any changes, you don't have to now, worry necessarily about another thing that goes around your code, because you're just explicitly in charge in one particular part in your code. So now that we got this cleared out, you might be wondering, who else uses micro front ends? So one of the companies that I told you earlier was that I joined recently too, and that's Lemonade, which is basically an insurtech company. And we're building really cool stuff and innovating the insurance world. But we're also splitting our monolith. And we're using a module federation for that, and also the micro front ends setup for it, the mindset. And there are also other big companies that use micro front ends, and those are like PayPal, DAZN, Spotify, and so on and so forth. So it's been around there. Now, one important thing to mention from this list is that except Lemonade, the rest of the companies, I'm not sure if they're using Webpack Module Federation to do their micro front ends, because there's a lot of ways of doing micro front ends. Obviously, in this session, we're only talking about Module Federation, but just keep in mind that. Now, we're all sitting here and seeing this new concept, and we might be having some obvious questions. So let's try to clear some of those up. So the first one is, you might be wondering, right? You saw these like React applications, those small ones, and you might be wondering, aren't you then importing React more than once? Well, I'm not, because in Webpack Module Federation plugin, we have this shared object, which basically you can tell it which which it basically give it an property, like for example, here was React, and we say in singleton mode true, and that means that we're not going to have React imported more than once. And also, it will just mean that from your host, you're going to get only one version of React. And so that clears out the duplication worry. So it's covered there. Now, you might be wondering about what about TypeScript, right? Because we all love those types and we want to continue on using them. Well, Module Federation has this plugin called TypeScript from Module Federation / TypeScript. It's available and it's possible to use Module Federation with TypeScript. And now let's talk a little bit about versioning. So we said that we have everything running now in runtime. And that means that every time I'm going to push any changes, my code will get it immediately, this big web app, right, that we mentioned earlier. And so what happens if the header team now, that are responsible of the header and the footer release some kind of breaking change, and that goes now to my, out there to my application, to the big one, and it might break some things. Now, and because it goes on runtime, it means that there is no versioning. Well, actually, it's not completely true, because with Module Federation, they don't really have an opinion whether you should do versioning or not. You just feel free to do if you do want to do that. What I like to do is use feature flags or just, normal Simver versioning you can do as well. It's really up to you and your team and how you're going to do that. But you can use like feature flags. And so there is another cool thing that I want to share with you, is that we have this dependency overview in Module Federation, which basically gives you a way to basically see which apps are you exposing from your host and what are you consuming from your remotes as well. And so it's kind of, shows you a big visualization on your dependencies and everything. And it's called like MF dashboard, and you're gonna get the link for that as well. It's just like an extra package so that you need to download. So these are really exciting times. Module Federation has enabled us now to connect all our apps and have this remotes and hosts. And we have this scalable micro frontends. Your team can grow further without having to worry about the entire application, rather than just worrying about their specific scope. And this introduces now a new era without bottlenecks and solves a lot of problems like we just witnessed. So guys, thank you very much. That was it for the session, and you can find the resources at danielfrey.me/resources. You can also scan the QR code, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions after the session or now even. So thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
That's tough, Daniel. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Daniel? All right. Back there.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how we went over this, but is there an accepted way for these different fronts to share data so that you don't have to make repeated requests for similar data or the same thing?
So if you can repeat the question to me, the one that is next to the mic.
Come here and speak into the mic. Is that okay? Yeah. 1 second, Daniel. So you come speak to the mic.
All right, great.
So I tried to implement something similar in a previous company, and a big issue that we had was, if you're in React, you can pass data through context or a similar mechanism. Right. Is there an accepted way for you to share data between all these front ends, or do they just have to make the same GET request twice?
Great question. So if we're talking in terms of React, right, and all our applications that we mentioned is in React, or do you talk about that we have micro front ends that use basically different framework? In which context are you asking the question? Is it in terms of, let's say we have all React, or is it like
Well, in any context, I guess. Let's say we have a view in a React application. The way that running on the same page, the way that in my previous company we try to fix it is attaching data to the window object, and then everyone just pulls data from there. That sounded pretty messy. I don't know if someone came up with a solution for that problem.
All right. So the thing is that if we're let me just try to give it an example in terms of React. Okay. So let's say we have a lot of React applications, and we have because they're all micro front ends, obviously, and they're apps, and they want to share state. Now, what you can do is basically you have your host application, which everybody goes through. So you can make like something like a component, let's say, call it main layout, and everybody in their first render of the like in your micro front end, they go through that. And so there you do the routing, and also you can do the context, and they're all then piping out through this main layout, which is in charge on doing routing as well as sharing context. And then you have state that you can use towards all your application. If this sounds confusing, by the way, in this resources page that I shared here, you have my repository, which I showed in this example, this website of my podcast, and there I used that method exactly like this main layout. And that was because all my micro front ends were in React. Now, what happens if you have a different framework? So, for example, Stencil, I know, can work with, I think it was Redux, if I'm not mistaken. So then they can both, still share basically the store. But then what happens if you go, for example, for context, and then maybe in Stencil you can still have it, but I'm not so sure. But then if you have view applications, then that's not really compatible with each other. And then you get into this kind of an issue. And actually, to be honest, I haven't tried really to specifically go towards that issue, and that can be an interesting way to see how it works. I know, for example, Spotify, or no, I know Netflix, for example, they also use micro front ends with module federation, and they have actually different frameworks. And I'm not sure how then they're solving that. And that would be an interesting thing to see. But actually, like the creator of Module Federation and people that are talking in the industry about micro front ends, they don't so recommend to use, different frameworks because it can create a lot of issues rather than solving some. And, there is a lot of resources out there around this topic, and it can be some really opinionated about it, and some can be just like, then you get this problem with state management. What do you do with that? So I don't really have then a straightforward answer to give to you, unfortunately, about this view React, for example. But there are some solutions that I know that you can get with Stencil, for example, in React.
Cool. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I was gonna say, does the host allow you to import the remote like components? But is there a way for the remotes to reference something from the host, or is this like circular? Can you do these circular dependencies that they can expose some utilities in the host and the remotes can use them without like passing through props and all that stuff? Just importing it.
So if I understand the question correctly, if I didn't, then just come closer because I was trying to hear you, but it's a little bit difficult. So the question was like, if can a remote be also a host, or do you need to do any other stuff? Is that your question?
Yeah, it was. My question is, yeah, so the hosts, they import components from the remotes, but can the host expose components, that can be imported from the remotes, like in the circular dependency?
Yeah, for sure.
Can they function as both a host and a remote?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And basically what you can do is that a host can also be then a remote dependency of another host. So basically your host can expose also components, and it can also then consume them. So it can go, it's like a unidirection thing. It can be both. So I guess that answers your question.
Yeah. But I guess you can't have like a circular dependency.
How do you mean circular dependency?
Like one host is referencing a remote and that remote is referencing the host that is referencing.
So you mean like an infinite loop kind of?
Yeah, like a circular thing.
I haven't tried that, but I suppose that even if you do it like that, Modular Federation kind of knows which one to go which and not to have duplications on it. That's what I would assume, but I haven't tried it actually.
Any other questions, anyone?
Feel free, guys. It's a big topic, and if something wasn't clear or anything, just you can always reach out. Just feel free now or later. See someone
Looks
in
like
the chat.
we got a question up here in the chat.
How do micro applications affect the performance of the overall website? Asked by Brittany. Can you maybe explain a little bit further? How do you mean by performance? I think she can also unmute, right?
You should be able to unmute her, or she can unmute herself.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Yes, so like if you have multiple micro applications on the website, does it make the website slower, or does that not affect performance at all? Does it actually make it I guess better to have these micro applications in regards to performance?
Right. That's a great question. Actually, thank you for asking. So I'm just gonna like you can still see my slides, right? And I'm just going backwards to like a certain slide. Can you see it?
Yes, we could see it.
Great. So we have this like remote entry.js, and one thing that is important to mention, because this is basically the the small chunks that we're exposing from our this is the micro front end app. And this remote entry is just a really small file that holds a reference to our application. And so whenever your website is gonna have this big website later on, and it's gonna consume that remote entry, they had made like a tons of performance thingies on those basically on those files, and they're really small, and they just, like I said, holds a certain reference to it with Webpack, and they have made like a certain stuff there that is really optimized. However, like anything, it can still be slow, right? It really depends how whoever architects your this basically solution at your company does it. You can still make it somehow slow. I haven't seen it personally, but I know that there for sure out there people that perhaps did it wrong, and then your website becomes less performant. So you need to understand, whenever you're going to this new concept, is to first of all understand the mindset of micro front ends, and then understand the mindset of how to connect them all together with using Modular Federation and doing it the right way. And it's either throughout this talk that you can see the repository, the way I did it, that it can, hold a reference on how you can do it as well. It can also be throughout other talks that in the industry that do talk extensively about Modular Federation. There will be also things in this resources page that it's just basically the answer is it really up to you how you are defining it in your architecture. It can, but I know for now it's like really performant, and they have made a lot of things around it to make it performant, and you can still have it not performant, depends on how you're doing it in your architecture. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much.
Absolutely welcome. Does anyone else would like to ask a question? Feel free.
1 second, Daniel. By the way, the camera, you guys are back, and you scan that, it works. Now, Park, okay. Making sure you guys understand. It's a cool website, Daniel. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks
Daniel.
for joining us from the Netherlands, man. Take care.
Take care, guys.